The most intense, the most enthralling and the most eagerly anticipated match of the Premier League season is almost upon us. Pep Guardiola versus Jurgen Klopp and Manchester City versus Liverpool. In today's video we will be discussing and debating as to whether or not Liverpool pose the biggest threat to Manchester City this season, along with an in-depth talk about the mammoth match this weekend. So first off, let's talk about the match itself, and a big talking point is the midfield. Liverpool have obviously had a complete overhaul this season. They've brought in a lot of exuberant, young, attacking midfield players, and obviously City have their tried and tested, the likes of Rodri, Bernardo Silva, players who know their position well, who are disciplined. And will Liverpool's midfield, with all of its exuberance, with the likes of Szoboszlai, McAllister, Trent if he plays in there, Elliott, Gravenberch, will they be caught out against City's, do you think? Because they're not as tactically switched on when, obviously, Liverpool don't have the ball?
There's definitely potential for that to happen. Absolutely, because Man City's midfield is one of, if not the best midfield in the world. Obviously, they don't have De Bruyne,
which is a big miss.
Which is a massive miss, and that is where Liverpool may have a hope in sort of getting better of the midfield, because De Bruyne is a massive influence in that midfield.
Especially without the proper DM, because De Bruyne will pick up those half spaces and in and around those areas.
He's just mesmerising play. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
But with the likes of Rodri, Bernardo Silva, etc., it's really difficult to sort of get the better out of that midfield.
Exactly, like the likes of Bernardo Silva picking up those pockets, and the discipline as well, because Rodri and Bernardo Silva are very drilled and they know their roles. They're not necessarily more intelligent footballers, but they're maybe more intelligent in the current City team compared to how the Liverpool players are in the Liverpool team. A lot more new faces, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where we see games are won and lost, don't we?
Exactly. Midfield is the main sort of area on the pitch. That is the main area where if you get the better of the midfield, you most likely win the game. I think most managers would say that as well. Most players would say that. It's definitely the main aspect of football.
It's the defining area.
It is, absolutely. And that's the thing, like, if Liverpool don't get the upper hand of the midfield, which is, a very good chance of not happening, that is where we could see massive, massive problems for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. Because
if they play the likes of Endo, he's maybe more defensively solid than McAllister, but he's not as good on the ball. And when City are initiating the press, will he get caught out? But then if you play McAllister, will City in transition with all their pace and creativity, will they just play around him? It's different from Henderson, Wijnaldum and Fabinho. It's completely different.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Collective, isn't it?
Because when you had the Henderson, Wijnaldum, Fabinho midfield, that was just an engine of a midfield.
Exactly.
That was just running, and they would outrun City's midfield. And they did get the upper hand of them back in, obviously, when Liverpool won the title, and the years before that and after that, when they had the title races. That is when Liverpool sometimes would get the better of them when they'd outrun them. But
just
this midfield, with the midfield that Klopp's going for now as well, with Szoboszlai, McAllister, and
Trent dropping in.
Trent, that's the thing. Like, it's not really a running midfield. It's not an engine midfield. Klopp sort of changed his system to a more technical midfield, like City's and many other midfields like United's and Tottenham to an extent, Arsenal. So there's a lot more technical midfields now. We don't see the midfields of Klopp's old system with the Henderson, the Wijnaldum, the Fabinho. And that is where we could see issues, because Liverpool can't really put that system out there where they outrun Man City, because it's impossible to do that with the players that Klopp has at his disposal. And
it's hard to be technically better than City's midfield. So this could be a big problem for Liverpool, but at the same time, with all that attacking exuberance, they may just be too much for City. He covers ground, doesn't he?
Yeah, Szoboszlai behind, in my opinion, obviously a bit biased, behind James Maddison, I think he's the best signing of the summer, really. But he's definitely up there for at least top 2 signings of the summer, and he's been fantastic for Liverpool, and he's sort of changed them in a way. I mean, we think how much better Liverpool have got. Obviously, McAllister's helped as well, but Szoboszlai's been the main man in that midfield. And
the amount of ground he covers, the link-up play with Trent and Salah.
I think he could definitely be sort of the main man that Liverpool look on to, obviously apart from Salah and the Van Dijk, etc., the big names. He could be sort of a dark horse name that people at Liverpool may look onto, and perhaps getting them that 3 points that Liverpool desperately need if they want to go and win the title.
I think he's key if Liverpool do want to win the midfield battle.
Yeah.
Maybe not from a defensive standpoint.
No.
In terms of covering ground and exploiting City's small gaps that they do sometimes leave, and obviously targeting Rodri. But it'd be interesting. We'll sort of lead on to that now. Is what do Liverpool do with Rodri? Because back in the day, you'd have like Firmino who'd drop in and he'd sit on City's DM, stop them from playing through that first and second phase of build up.
Front there.
It's contradict it. Yeah. Unless you play Jota or Gakpo, that's the thing. If Liverpool played Jota or Gakpo, they could sit on Rodri and obviously stop the City playing out for that first and second phase. But then if they play Núñez, you've obviously got that attacking exuberance the other way and the pace behind.
If you play Jota, you can shut off Rodri. Well, there's a chance of shutting off Rodri. Obviously, Rodri's a fantastic player, so it's not guaranteed. But there's a good chance of shutting off Rodri if Jota drops in like Firmino used to do. But the thing is when Núñez is up front, he just causes mayhem.
Exactly.
The guy has like 5 shots in the first 5 minutes. Like, it's ridiculous. So I'm granted they might not be good shots. They might be good shots. They might be bad shots.
Yeah.
But, it's sort of a mixed bag with Nunes and his sort of ability when it comes to coming through on goal. But Nunes does always have that sort of area of threat, and Rodri himself would have to be wary of that. Obviously, City defence mainly, but Rodri himself would have to be wary of that. But like you said, Jota dropping in deep would mean that perhaps Rodri might get shut out the game.
Yeah, to an extent, because like we said, it's hard to stop him completely, but if you limit Rodri, you stop a lot of City's...
You do, yeah.
Not firepower, but obviously build-up play just the way he reads the game is exceptional. So if you stop that, then you stop a massive part of City's
I think Nunes would be my preferred
Is that you play, through the middle or out on the left?
Through the middle, I think.
I think that's why they'll play Kyle Walker, because I think they'll be thinking, if Nunes does play, he'll skin players like Diaz and Kanji with pace.
Walker is sort of the only player that can keep up with them. I mean, you think if Nunes came up against Diaz, it'd completely burn him. Obviously, Diaz is a fantastic defender, by the way. I'm not saying he's not, but in terms of pace, he'd completely rip him to shreds. And I think that's why if I was Klopp, I'd probably go for Nunes in the middle. And Pep, like you said, Pep might look to counter that with putting Walker on him.
Exactly.
But I think if Nunes did go for the middle and you did have the defence of Diaz and Stones, there could be a lot of issues caused there with the high line that City play. And Nunes getting in behind, Jota just doesn't really add that threat.
He's got pace, Jota, but he's not rapid, is he?
That's the thing. And Jota...
He's more of an intelligent player.
Yeah.
You'll see balls in between the lines and stuff.
He is more like a Firmino, to be fair. Yeah. Like, obviously not as good as Firmino, but back in the day.
It's like a hybrid between Firmino and Nunes.
Yeah.
A bit like Gakpo is as well, but Gakpo's more Firmino-like, whereas Jota feels like he's almost got that perfect balance between Nunes' pacing behind and Firmino's trickery. And
I just think Jota doesn't... In my opinion, I just don't think Jota adds that... City aren't going to be worried of Jota when he's up front. But I think if Nunes was there, I think they'd have a lot of concerns.
They may play a yard or so deeper.
Yeah, I think that could definitely help push City back with Nunes being such a threat. And if they do continue to go forward, like I said earlier, Nunes can exploit that high line in behind.
So there's pros and cons to both, and it'd be interesting to see what Klopp goes with. So now let's move on to how City can exploit Liverpool. Obviously, we know they have so much firepower up top, so many quality players. But the key battle, I think, on the weekend, providing he starts, will be Doku against Trent.
Yeah.
Trent's worst nightmare is a tricky winger who can take on him with pace, skill, agility, dribbling. We saw how he struggled against Luton Town, and Doku is a different quality and a different class of player. And when he's squaring up Trent 1v1, running in behind, I think it can cause a lot of issues for Trent, which is unfortunate for me as a Liverpool fan, but from a neutral and a City's perspective, it can be quite exciting to watch, can't it?
Definitely. I mean, as a neutral, watching Doku play, absolutely fantastic to see him play, because he's a great player, great technique, great skill, very nimble as well. And Trent, like you said, that is his worst nightmare. He would not be sleeping well come Friday night, but there is definitely chances where Liverpool can counter-attack, and if Doku sort of does lose the ball, which we did see it with Arsenal when they did lose against Arsenal, Doku came off the bench and Doku sort of looked to take players on, and he did lose the ball quite often, and Arsenal did counter-attack from it. I don't think they scored from it necessarily, but they were counter-attacking and there were opportunities for them to score. And if Liverpool do that, I think they're more I think they're more clinical, and I think they're more ruthless than Arsenal.
They're better in transition than us, aren't they? There's more pace and power and explosive stuff.
Like much more explosive on their counter attack. And I think that if Doku does look to take on Trent or take on whoever and does lose the ball, if Liverpool do counter City with that high line with the likes of Nunes and Salah in behind, I think City could have some issues there.
Because obviously Doku, as much as Harvey said he's good at that one-on-one ability, losing the ball obviously could cost City going the other way because he's out of position, but also it's his defensive discipline as well. Will he be able to track runners as well as like a Grealish, or if Bernardo Silva plays out there, or a Foden? Is he disciplined to know, Trent may drop into midfield here, I've got to quickly go to him, or Szoboszlai's dropping out here, Salah, because Salah, Trent and Szoboszlai do like to interchange in their sort of triangles, and that could cause a lot of problems for Doku, who may not be as much of an intelligent player or as suited to City's system, like Grealish, for example.
Well, you saw in the United v City tactical analysis video that we did do, Bernardo Silva and Grealish were swapping around.
Yes.
And that would cause absolute mayhem for Trent, and not just Trent, but the Liverpool midfield and especially the Liverpool defence, because there's so much confusion going on and so much rotation. You saw how bad it was for United, and United couldn't really keep up with it, and that's how they got completely obliterated by City. And I know Liverpool are obviously a better level than United. They're much, much better right now. But I do think it's sort of hard for any team to comprehend constant rotations between players. And with Bernardo Silva and Grealish both being good one-on-one as well, like it's not like they're both maybe...
They're just not as explosive as Doku.
No, they're not. And that's the thing. Like, I think if Grealish and Bernardo Silva were one-on-one against Trent, I still think they would most likely beat him. So it's not even like a thing of...
The recovery pace it's easier to catch up with them once they're partial in it.
That's the thing. Like, they're just not as a threat as Doku, but if they are rotating around Grealish and Bernardo Silva, if Grealish does start, because Pep perhaps wants that more sort of solidity
The
compared
players
to Doku,
maybe a bit more switched on the other
more
way.
disciplined. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And if Pep does go for that, then you could see the rotation between the two of Bernardo and Grealish, and that would cause mayhem for Liverpool's defence as well.
So there's pros and cons to both. It'd be interesting to see if Pep just goes, Doku, run at Trent. He doesn't like it. Try and get him behind. Obviously, if Konate's there over Matip, it will help with covering. Or maybe he'll go, let's play Grealish and Bernardo Silva. Let's try and confuse Trent a different way. So it'd be interesting to see how he sets up. Both will cause problems for Liverpool, but maybe having Grealish and Bernardo Silva will be a bit more, there'll be a bit more structure for City, and maybe they'll be more defensively solid and less, obviously, vulnerable in transition.
Yeah, and I think Pep could look to go with Grealish. I do think Doku will start. I will say that. Yeah, I do think Doku will start. I think Pep would be...
Man in form?
Yeah, exactly. He's in form. He's been banging goals in recently and assists and been playing fantastic for City. So you'd be very, not stupid, but because obviously Pep's not stupid, but you'd be very sort of bold to drop him for someone like Jack Grealish. But I think if this was at maybe Anfield, I do think we could see Jack Grealish start, because you're going more of a sort of a secure foundation when you're at Anfield.
A bit more conservative.
Yeah, because you don't want to be going, high flying mayhem at Anfield, because that's when you can get caught.
Yeah.
And when Liverpool go 1-2-0 up, that Anfield obviously atmosphere will be ridiculous, and City won't be able to really comprehend with it. But because it's at City's ground, perhaps Doku might be allowed more freedom to take on Trent.
They feel like they're in the driver's seat.
Exactly, that's the thing. Like, I think before the ball's even kicked off, I think City are sort of the more dominant team because they're at home.
They're the favourites, aren't they?
They are, exactly. But I think if it was the other way around, and I think if it was at Anfield, I think you'd be saying Liverpool are more...
That's a fair point.
Not necessarily the favourites. I mean, I'd say they are probably because they're at Anfield, but you wouldn't have to even say they're the favourites, but they're the more dominant side. They're probably the side that look to attack more. Whereas,
so Pep knows, and obviously previously having lost 3 and 4 goals there.
This is worse nightmare than Anfield, isn't it? Exactly, that's the thing.
Well, he never lost by 4, but he conceded 4. He concedes a lot at Anfield, more than any other ground, doesn't he? So,
he does.
Like Harvey said, at the Etihad, they're probably going to be a bit more exuberant and forward-thinking. Not that City are never not, but like he said, maybe just that slight tweak could see, obviously, a change in formation and setup. As much as Trent's defensive woes may worry a lot of Liverpool fans like myself, having Van Dijk almost back to his best this season has been a massive help.
Yeah.
Look at Liverpool, haven't had a recognised 6 on the pitch at times, and they still have conceded the least amount of goals in the league. And I think you can put a lot of that down to Van Dijk's, obviously, resurgence in form, because he's almost 80 to 90% back to his best. Not quite, obviously, like his prime a few years ago, but he's almost there, isn't he?
Exactly, and I think Virgil van Dijk, when he's not even at his best, just near his best, I think he's unstoppable, and he's, without a doubt, the best defender in the world. And I think he has been sort of, like you said, not back to his best, but he's definitely not far off it. And I think this
is the best that we can see Van Dijk achieve now, post his ACL injury.
I agree with that, because Van Dijk's obviously had a rocky few seasons. Last season he didn't have the best of seasons, and when he had his injury, obviously, that was very heartbreaking to see. But now that he's obviously back and he's sort of reinvented himself, and he's, Liverpool as well being a much better side, I think Van Dijk took a lot of responsibility on obviously being captain. Exactly, that's the thing. So I think Van Dijk is definitely back to his best, and for me right now, he's the best defender in the Premier League. And I know loads of people say like Saliba, Diaz.
But Diaz has had a drop off in form, and although Saliba's been good, I arguably think Van Dijk's been better. And look,
I agree.
Least amount of goals conceded in the league, and you haven't had a recognised 6 player. And Arsenal have had Declan Rice in front of Saliba. Yeah. I know Liverpool have got Alisson and players like that, but yeah, you can look at either way, Saliba or Van Dijk, but mine Harvey's opinion, Van Dijk, and he will be key on the weekend.
Absolutely.
We know how good Haaland's been. Yes, obviously without De Bruyne, maybe he's not been quite at his best because that link-up play was just so good, but he's been evolving his game slightly, which may confuse some defenders. I don't think it would confuse Van Dijk, because we've seen Haaland maybe scoring more goals, like that goal the other day he scored from outside the box, maybe playing slightly different to how he did when De Bruyne was on that pitch with that almost telepathic understanding.
Yeah.
But Van Dijk, we know if he's at his best, like we've seen last season, even when he wasn't at his best, he managed to pocket Haaland. So I think if he's on it and he's switched on, and as a Liverpool fan I know if he can be, he can obviously beat Haaland airily. In some duels, I know Haaland's quick, but Van Dijk still has pace. He does, yeah. He's not just torn his ACL and then become a slug. He's still got the afterburners.
He's really quick. I mean, you can see he catches up with a lot of players.
Yeah.
So, and he's one of the fastest players in the Premier League as well, on record as well. That's actually on record. That's a stat. That's a fact. Also, when on international duty, when Norway have played Netherlands, Van Dijk has also come up against Haaland, and Van Dijk has often got the better of Haaland. So he understands, not maybe got his number, but he understands the way Haaland plays and can definitely nullify him.
And we move on now to our next talking point. Are Liverpool the biggest threat to City this season? Many people will say yes, because Liverpool are second in the league. But then when you look at a team like Arsenal with Saliba, who's been brilliant this season, Declan Rice in front of them, who's also been brilliant, one of the best signings of the summer.
Yeah.
You may think, well, actually, are Arsenal the biggest threat? What do you think? Who do you think's a bigger threat to City this season?
Well, obviously Arsenal are a young, energetic side, and they are a fantastic team. Obviously, to watch for a neutral, not for me, but for a neutral, they're very, very good to watch, and they are a very, very dangerous team. Perhaps they haven't looked as good as they were last year. But they've definitely got the points, and they've got more points than they were last year, if I remember rightly, and they're accumulating the points.
Maybe they're a bit more solid this season.
They are, yeah.
Because Saka and Martinelli and stuff, it's almost like they don't cause as much of a threat this season.
No.
But at the same time, with the introduction of Rice and Saliba's brilliant form, and even players like Tomiyasu, he's been playing quite well, David Raya, do they look maybe a bit more defensively solid? Are they maybe been a bit more pragmatic this season?
Perhaps so, yeah. I mean, I think they're not as freed. I think I saw someone talking about it, I can't remember who it was now, but I saw a lot of people have been saying, though, that Arteta's not necessarily allowed his players the freedom that they did have last year.
Yeah.
And I think I'd agree with that, because if you look at the way they play, they're a lot more sort of constricted and system-based compared to last year. They're a little bit more sort of easy on the eye, a bit more free, had a lot more character about them compared to this season. But they're in with a shout at the title. They're still up with City and Liverpool.
Yeah.
So you can't really argue with what Arteta's doing. Perhaps they didn't look as good, but they're still getting the points that they need. But I would edge Liverpool, despite Arsenal having more depth as well in the defensive areas and somewhat the midfield areas, because in the attack they don't really have any depth at all.
Liverpool's attack is a whole other level in terms of depth and quality, isn't it?
I mean, Liverpool, in terms of depth, I think Liverpool have arguably the best attacking outlet in the league, in my opinion.
As a collective, those five that they have.
City, you could edge a better, but in terms of the players that Liverpool have in that attack, is ridiculous.
You can almost interchange Liverpool's attack, apart from maybe Salah, but Nunez, Jota, Gakpo and Diaz. You could play any of those two and still have an abundance of quality on the pitch.
It's really just a bunch of talent, bags of talent in that attack. And City obviously have it as well, but I do think Liverpool might have the edge on it. But I think Liverpool obviously don't have the depth in the midfield, as we were discussing earlier.
Well, we have a lot of bodies, but it seems like we have a lot of similar bodies. We have Elliott's a number 8, Szoboszlai's a number 8, McAllister's really a number 8, Jones is a number 8.
So it's a DM spot, really, isn't it?
Exactly. Gavin Birch likes to play further forward.
Yeah, that's the thing. And the defence isn't got as much depth, really. The fullback area is all right with Tsimikas and Robertson.
Tsimikas has been bad this season.
Is it? Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I know what you mean. There's bodies there. Gomez can play at left back.
The thing is, Tsimikas hasn't been bad the past few seasons. So I haven't personally seen him much.
But this season, he's arguably our worst player. Yeah,
wow,
he's been poor. The other game he was alright against Brentford, but this season it was away in the Europa League. He gave the ball away. He was bad in other few matches, and I don't know. You just don't rely on him the same way against Robertson. When Robertson plays, you've got that player you can trust. Whereas Tsimikas is a bit more flaky.
You do know Robertson's good when you're going to play. You do know he's good. Whereas Tsimikas, I mean, I actually thought he's one of the best left backs, backup left backs in the league at one point.
He was last season. This season he's a bit slow to get going, but yes, he was at points, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He does have the ability there.
His dead ball situations, he's not a dead ball specialist, but in terms of the way he whips in crosses and corners, he's very good at that. But sometimes he's a bit. He switches off sometimes, and when he receives the ball, it's not like with Robertson, he receives the ball, bang out his feet. With Tsimikas, it's almost like he gets a bit caught under his feet. Against City, that could cost us. But then if you play Gomez, he doesn't have that same attacking license and attacking outlet down that side.
No, that's the thing. I don't think
so
Gomez
you could flip it either way.
I don't think Gomez has been too bad on the right when he is covering for Trent. When Trent has had injuries, I don't think Gomez has been that bad at all, really. But I do think it's obviously not the best of depth, but I do think it's decent. And I think Liverpool obviously do need more cover in that, especially the two centre-back areas, which really is what I'm getting at. Despite Van Dijk and Konate, you haven't really got depth there, because Matip has sort of lost his legs a bit.
Although this season, he has been better than Konate at points, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I mean, last season he was horrific.
Yeah, last season compared to Konate, he was nothing. But Konate's been a bit slow to get going, a few injuries.
That's true, yeah.
Quanta's coming through. But yeah, I think with Arsenal and Liverpool, it's almost, you can look at both their teams. They both got quality. They both got depth. It's just in some areas, they're better than others. And that's what makes it so tight. But we know Klopp, he's been and done it before. He's got that pedigree. Whereas Arteta, we still haven't seen him lead a team to a title. Fight against City when they're, we've seen Arteta fight against City, but we haven't seen him beat City when they're at their full flow.
Well, that's the thing. We've seen Liverpool and Klopp get the better of City multiple times.
Yeah, and in those big key matches.
Moments, yeah, we've seen it in the Champions League, we've seen it in the Premier League countless times. We've
and
seen it
past Christmas
when
the teams start to really pick up form and get going. Not in September, October when teams are still maybe a bit naive. Not naive, but a bit more they're not as fluid in their system and the way they play. Whereas come the end of the season, they've got that gelling and that sharpness about them.
I think experience is a massive thing. I think it tells you a lot. I think experience and history will tell you a lot when it comes to football, because you look at Klopp in the past few years that he's had with Liverpool. He's shown that he can go head to head with Pep and he can beat Pep. Arteta's shown that sort of he sort of crumbles when it comes to when it comes to the high pressure moments. And if Klopp was in that position that Arteta was in last year, without a doubt in my mind, Klopp would have won the league, with whether it was the Liverpool side or Arsenal side.
So that's maybe what sets the two teams apart, isn't it? Because, like we said, quality, it's hard to justify who's the better team. Personally, I think Liverpool but I am a Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
But if you said Arsenal, I'm not going to cut your head off. Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah.
It's similar.
I would say the actual better team, I would actually argue, is Arsenal, to be fair.
Maybe more complete and settled.
Yeah, that's what I would argue.
I still don't think Liverpool or Klopp know
and I think Arsenal
they're our best team.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas Arsenal's a bit more Saka, Martinelli, Rice, Saliba, you know the positions, don't you?
I do think Arsenal are more sort of flexible in the systems that they can play too. I think Liverpool are more, not necessarily rigid. I don't think Liverpool are rigid, but I think Arteta can sort of
it's being coached
experiment
Pep,
a little bit more. Yeah, that's true.
He knows all these different.
Yeah.
Whereas Klopp, he's still trying to find the new system for Liverpool. Yes, we're seeing the box midfield and the link up with Szoboszlai, Trent and Salah, and we've maybe seen players like, I don't know, when Gomez and Jota play on the left, like we saw against Luton, Liverpool are very narrow, because Jota isn't a winger who likes to get wide, likes to cut in, and Gomez doesn't provide the width. But it also makes Liverpool maybe a bit more defensively solid, so then they can attack with more exuberance on the right. So
I do think
there's loads of different avenues you can look at.
With that added box midfielder Trent, you could argue, and I wouldn't say you would wrong, you could argue Liverpool do have that flexibility that Arsenal do have, because obviously Arsenal have Zinchenko dropping in sort of that midfield area. So I do get that argument, but I just think Arsenal have just a tiny bit more flexibility, just because I think they have more technical players than Liverpool, if that makes sense.
In some ways, yeah.
Like, I know Liverpool have sort of changed their sort of philosophy, or Klopp has changed
a much more creative midfield, isn't it?
Yeah, more technical team. But I do think Arsenal do have the more technical players right now in terms of their attack, especially. I think they've got more. They're more complete slightly. I think.
You think so? In their attack, really?
Yeah.
Do you think Liverpool have just got attackers and players catered to every sort of setup you want to play, going in behind, dropping in deep?
No. I would agree with that, but I just think Arsenal's players, when you look at Saka and Jesus mainly, I think them two together are a lot more complete of a players than Liverpool usually have.
Interesting.
I do think they are more like Saka, especially Jesus as well. Obviously, the finishing Saka does have, but Jesus isn't a very clinical finisher. But I do think they're more sort of, they got more assets in, like you look at Nunes, for example. Nunes wouldn't be able to drop deep and play, in my opinion.
But then Gakpo could, or Jota.
Gakpo could. That's a good shout. Yeah, it's a very good shout. Yeah, so it's a tough one.
It's hard to call, innit? I think you can look at it any way.
And I think that goes into the conversation of the depth of Liverpool's attack compared to Arsenal's. You know, you look at the depth that Liverpool have in their attack. I wouldn't. That's what I'm saying. I do think they actually have a better attack. I just think Arsenal have the more sort of complete assets to a team.
Well, Arsenal's system does help, because the difference between Arsenal and Liverpool's system is, well, I know Liverpool are changing from their super high intense football and they're going for maybe a more technical approach, but Liverpool is still explosive. They look to counter attack teams. They're more high pressing than Arsenal, whereas Arsenal will maybe a bit more like City, tiki taka, knock the ball around, control the play, dictate the tempo more so, which maybe looks that they're more technical players because they're playing a more technical system, whereas Klopp's system relies more on energy and impetus than Arsenal's, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like if Liverpool, like we saw last season, if players haven't got the legs and they can't put in the hard yards, they do struggle in comparison. Whereas Arsenal, I think, like you said, they're a lot more like City, tailored to keeping the ball. And if they don't have players who have the legs as such, it doesn't hamper them.
They're more of a sort of title-winning built side, if that makes sense. Like, they're more, the way they play, you'd think they are sort of the champions, the way they play, because they play very similar to City. But I mean, like I said, I do think Arsenal maybe have like the slightly more sort of complete assets to a team. But I'm not really arguing their case for them to be a bigger threat than Liverpool, because I think Liverpool are actually more of a threat than Arsenal, in my opinion.
So
with
you
the
think
depth that they have.
Come April, May, you'd be more likely to see Liverpool in first or second than Arsenal?
Absolutely.
And that's generally down to Klopp, you reckon?
Mainly
he's
Klopp.
Been there before.
Mainly Klopp. I think
and even the
Klopp's
Liverpool players have
main
been there
man.
before. Salah, Van Dijk, Alisson,
Yeah,
Trent.
they've got the experience. I mean, you think Van Dijk, Salah and Trent have won everything there is. They've won every single trophy there is.
Robertson. Because there's still that core of the team there. They know they lost a lot of players.
That's why
who won
Arsenal
them
crumbled
things.
last year, because they didn't know how to sort of deal with their moments, and they still don't. You know, you could say that, they've learned from their experience. Yes, I'm sure they have, but they haven't been there and won it. It just tells you a lot of history and experience. It tells you a lot in football, and I think mainly Klopp, and a lot of the Liverpool players will tell you that the history and the experience goes all with them and none of it with Arsenal, because barely any of them Arsenal players have not only not won a Premier League or Champions League, they've barely won anything in their career. So it's very hard for them to sort of get to that stage again. Like I said, I'm sure they've learned from their mistakes last year, Arteta as well, but it's just a different environment. When you've been there and won it, you know what to do, you know how to handle situations, and Klopp has. He's been to 3 Champions League finals, and he's been in many Premier League title races, won every trophy there is.
Even at Germany, he's in title races as well.
Exactly, won the league with Dortmund, so he knows how to win it. That's the thing. Arteta and Arsenal players have not been there, and like I said,
that could be the telling point, couldn't it?
Exactly, that's the thing. You could argue they're the better side, and you can argue in the comments that Arsenal are the better team and they've got the better players, and I wouldn't dispute that. I actually agree with that, but I just don't think that sort of comes into account when it comes to a title race, because as we saw that last year, we did see that last year.
Because it's so tight, it comes down to these fine margins.
It does, yeah. And I think Klopp and Liverpool do just sort of edge that over Arsenal.
And before we wrap up the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button if you have enjoyed this content, because obviously over the next coming weeks, we'll produce more stuff like this if you respond well. And we have been loving the interactions on the YouTube shorts. We can clearly see you like them. Anyway, who do you think will win this weekend? Liverpool or Man City? Who do you think will pose the biggest threat to Man City this season for the title? Arsenal or Liverpool? Do you think Klopp and Arteta? Who do you think can cut it in the big time? We've seen Klopp do it before, but can he do it again? But we've never seen Arteta do it. And that is the big question.
Yeah.
Comment down below your thoughts. Comment down below your predictions. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll catch you in the next one.